everyone, it's me Abidjan Palonpon. In this video, me and my partner will going to discuss all about John B. Watson.
John B. Watson was an influential American psychologist. He was born on January 9, 1878 in Travelers Rest, South Carolina, but he passed away on September 25, 1958 in New York City. He is best known for founding classical behaviorism, a psychological approach that emphasized the study of observable behavior over internal mental state. Watson's work marked a significant shift in psychology, focusing on the relationship between environmental stimuli and behavioral responses, and rejecting introspective methods that were prevalent at the time. Watson earned his PhD in psychology from the University of Chicago in 1903 and later became a professor at Johns Hopkins University. He established a laboratory for research in comparative psychology and articulated his behaviorist views in the seminal article Psychology as Behaviorist Views It in 1913. His major works include Behavior, An Introduction to Comparative Psychology, 1914, and Psychology from the Standpoint of a Behaviorist, 1919. One of Watson's most controversial experiments involved conditioning fear in an infant known as Little Albert, demonstrating that emotional responses could be conditioned in humans. Despite his academic success, Watson's career in academia ended abruptly in 1920 due to personal scandals, leading him to a successful career in advertising. Watson's influence extended beyond academia as his book Behaviorism 1925 popularized the field and inspired many to pursue psychology professionally. His work laid the groundwork for later developments in behavior therapy and had a lasting impact on the field of psychology, particularly in the United States.
So in this juncture, we will tackle about the behaviorism theory of John B. Watson's. Behaviorism is also known as behavioral psychology, is a theory of learning based upon the idea that all behaviors are acquired through conditioning. So conditioning occurs through interactions with the environment. So the behaviorists believe that our responses to environmental stimuli shape our actions. So it is a highly influential academic school of psychology that dominated psychological theory between the two world wars. So behaviorism refers to the school of psychology founded by John B. Watson, based on the belief that behaviors can be measured, trained, and changed. Behaviorism was established with the publication of Watson's classic paper titled Psychology as the Behaviorist Views It in 1913. So now let's tackle about structuralism. So it was a major school of thought in psychology that focused on the structures of our own mind. So it saw psychology as the study of consciousness, experience, and mental processes. So while it is acknowledged the importance of bodily activities, it is also considered them the secondary to the mental phenomena. So the key of the method of structuralism was introspection. So what is introspection? So nag-involve ni siya sa atong individuals carefully observing and reporting on our own thoughts, feelings, and sensations. So think of it like looking inward and nag-describe ta sa workings of our own mind. So for example, a structuralist might ask you to describe your own experience of tasting a lemon. So you as an individual would then try to break down your experience into its basic components. So unsa man ang lemon, unsa man ang lasa, unsa man siya. So pwede ta makaingon nga ayang sourness, iyang bitterness, and the sensation of the lemon's textures on your mouth. Move to the assumption of behaviorism. So the first assumption is the primary means of investigating learning is by observations. Ano man? Because it gives us direct evidence. So observation provides direct evidence of how someone is learning. Makita nato ang iyang behaviors, ma-change ba iyang performance, even gamay lang yun nga cue like facial expressions and body language gani sa usa ka tawo nga nag-indicate nga nakasabot siya. So usa ani nga example is in the classroom, di ba? A teacher observes students working on a task ba karon, so to see how they approach the problem, how to collaborate and demonstrate their own understanding. Number 2 is the principles of learning apply equally to different behaviors and to a different species of animals. So the principle of learning like association, reinforcement, punishment are fundamental and maka-apply jud siya across various behaviors and species. So whether it's a dog learning a new trick baron or a human mastering a new skill, so the underlying mechanisms of learning are the same. Number 3 is learning processes can be studied objectively. So nga naman. So observable changes, 'di ba? The learning leads to observable changes in our behavior. For example, usa ka tawo nga nag-learn siya og new language might start speaking it more fluently. Or kato, a dog learning a new trick might perform it well on command. Number 4 is internal cognitive processes are largely excluded from scientific study. So we can apply the indirect measures here. So di ba dili man jud nato makita ang thoughts, but we can study them indirectly through behavioral and psychological measures. Pwede sa reaction times, sa eye tracking and eye tracking. Next is learning involves a behavior change. Number 6 is organisms are born as black sheets. Since each organism has a different experience with the environment, so each will have a different set of behaviors. The last number is learning is largely the result of environmental events because behaviorists tend to use the term conditioning instead of learning to reflect this. So now let's move to the principles of learning from behaviorist theory. So the first one is principles of frequency or exercise. So it states that the more frequently a given response is made to a given stimulus, the more likely the response to that stimulus will be repeated. Second principle is the principles of recency. So it states that the more recently a given response to a particular stimulus is made, the more likely it will be repeated. So example is, whatever we did last under a given set of circumstances will be what we will tend to do again if those circumstances are encountered. So things most recently learned are best remembered. So frequent review and summarization help us fix in the mind the material covered. Next principle is the principles of effect. So the positive and negative reinforcement. So example of this is the consistency in the use of reinforcers during the teaching learning process. Now let's tackle about the aspects of Watson's theory. The first one is he opposed the metallistic concepts. He used contiguity to explain learning. He considered emotion to be just another example of classical conditioning. He rejected the notion of individual differences. So he thought complex behaviors came about through combinations of identifiable reflexes. He was also the chief proponent of nurture and believed that all human differences were the result of learning. He also believed that the practice threatens learning. So the two implications of Watson's theory is animal trainers, parents, teachers, and many others makes use of basic behavioral principles to help teach new behaviors and discourage unwanted ones. To find out whether the students have better understanding through observing their own behavior might change. So this use of reinforcement to improve. Positive verbal reinforcements take little time or effort and usually bring about the desired behavior quickly. Although the positive outcome of John B. Watson's behavior, so here are the critics of John Watson's theory. First, he points out that there is no guarantee in favor of the successful movement being most frequently repeated or exercised. Secondly, if recency alone be the cause of learning, then every prior unsuccessful or erroneous movement being recent would go on being repeated. That's all, and we thank you for listening.